3 weeks passed like a blur of classes and night shifts. Maya continued her routine of sitting in the back corner, taking notes while her classmates debated strategies they had learned from textbooks. She worked in the maintenance bay every evening, cleaning laboratories and lecture halls to earn money for food and supplies. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning when the emergency alarms started screaming across the academy. Maya was walking to her first class when the sirens began. Red lights flashed in the hallways and a mechanical voice echoed from every speaker. All personnel report to designated emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Students ran in every direction, some heading for their assigned positions while others simply stood frozen in panic. Maya followed the crowd toward the main auditorium where Captain Kane and other instructors were gathering everyone together. Admiral Gary Stone stood at the podium, his face grave and tired. Behind him, a massive holographic display showed the outer edge of the solar system. Maya could see red markers moving toward the blue dot that represented Earth. The Zephyrian advance fleet has arrived, Admiral Stone announced. His voice carried clearly over the crowd, but Maya could hear the strain in it. Long-range sensors detected them 6 hours ago at the edge of our system. They will reach Earth's orbit in approximately 72 hours. The auditorium erupted, in shocked voices and frightened whispers. Maya heard someone behind her start crying. Jake Morrison stood near the front, his face pale but determined. Admiral Stone raised his hand for silence. The enemy fleet consists of 47 ships, including 12 dreadnoughts. Intelligence estimates they carry enough firepower to glass every major city on Earth within minutes of arrival. Tyler Brooks raised his hand. Sir, what are our defensive capabilities? The Terran Defense Force has 19 ships in the immediate area, Admiral Stone replied. More are en route from other systems, but they won't arrive in time. We're outnumbered and outgunned by a significant margin. Maya pulled out her notebook and started writing. 47 ships, 12 dreadnoughts, 72 hours. She tried to imagine formations that could make such numbers work against Earth's defenses, but every scenario ended the same way. All fourth-year cadets are hereby granted emergency commissions, Admiral Stone continued. You will receive your assignments within the hour. Third-year students will assume support roles. Everyone else will help with civilian evacuation procedures. The crowd began to disperse, but Maya remained in her seat. She stared at the display showing the approaching red markers and felt something nagging at the back of her mind. Something about the formation looked familiar. Captain Kane noticed Maya still sitting there as the auditorium emptied. Rodriguez, you should report to the third-year coordinator for your assignment. Captain, Maya said quietly, can I ask you something about the enemy formation? Captain Kane glanced at the display. What about it? The way they're arranged, Maya said, pointing at the red markers. It's the same pattern we used in the simulation 3 weeks ago. The exact same formation. Captain Kane looked more closely at the display. Formations often look similar, Rodriguez. There are only so many ways to arrange ships for maximum effectiveness. Maya shook her head. No, ma'am. It's not just similar, it's identical. The spacing between the dreadnoughts, the positions of the escort ships, even the scouts on the flanks. Everything matches what we saw in class. For a moment, Captain Kane studied the formation with more attention. Maya could see her comparing what she saw to her memories of the classroom simulation. You're right, Captain Kane said slowly. The formation is identical, but that could be coincidence. Maya opened her notebook and flipped back through pages of notes she had taken during various classes and simulations. Captain, look at this. Every time we've run exercises against Zephyrian tactics, they use the same patterns. Attack Formation 7 for ship-to-ship combat. Defense Pattern 3 when protecting larger vessels. Retreat Formation 2 when withdrawing. She showed Captain Kane page after page of notes, each one documenting repeated tactical patterns. They're not adapting their strategies. They're using the same approaches over and over again. Captain Kane examined Maya's notes with growing interest. These are very detailed observations, Rodriguez. But what does it mean? Even if they're predictable, they're still much stronger than we are. Maybe, Maya said. But what if their strength comes from always fighting enemies who respond predictably? What if they've never faced anyone who didn't follow standard military doctrine? The captain was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the auditorium continued to empty as students and faculty rushed to their emergency assignments. Rodriguez, Captain Kane said finally, "Are you suggesting that unpredictable tactics might be effective against them?" Maya nodded. Every species they've conquered probably tried to match their firepower or copy their formations. But humans don't always follow the rules. We improvise. We adapt. We do things that don't make sense to anyone else. Captain Kane looked at the display again, then back at Maya's notebook. "This is interesting, but I'm not sure what we can do with it. Our fleet commanders have decades of experience. They know how to fight space battles." "That's the problem," Maya said. "They know how to fight the way everyone expects them to fight. But what if we didn't fight that way?" Before Captain Kane could respond, Jake Morrison approached them. His new lieutenant's insignia gleamed on his collar, and he carried orders in his hand. "Captain Kane," Jake said, "I've been assigned to the destroyer Defiant under Captain Ryan Cooper. We're supposed to report immediately." He noticed Maya sitting there with her notebook open. "What are you two discussing?" "Rodriguez has some interesting observations about Zephyrian tactics," Captain Kane replied. Jake glanced at Maya's notes with polite disinterest. "Ma'am, with respect, I don't think this is the time for theoretical discussions. We have a real battle to prepare for." Maya felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her voice steady. "The battle is exactly why this matters. If we fight them the way they expect, we'll lose." Jake's expression showed what he thought of getting tactical advice from someone who hadn't even been given a combat assignment. "Maya, I appreciate that. You pay attention in class, but actual warfare is different from taking notes. Experience matters." "So does thinking differently," Maya replied quietly. Captain Kane looked between them, then made a decision. "Morrison, report to your ship as ordered. Rodriguez, come with me. I want to show your analysis to someone." Jake shrugged and walked away, already focused on his upcoming battle assignment. Maya gathered her notebook and followed Captain Kane out of the auditorium. They walked quickly through corridors filled with running personnel and emergency preparations. Maya had never seen the academy in such chaos. Students who had been attending classes that morning were now wearing military uniforms and carrying weapons. Captain Kane led her to a small office near the command center. "Wait here," she said. "I'm going to contact Admiral Stone's tactical staff. Your observations might be worth sharing with people who can actually use them." Maya sat alone in the quiet office, listening to the sounds of preparation echoing through the halls. Outside the window, she could see transport ships landing and taking off as the evacuation began. She opened her notebook and started writing again. If she was right about the Zephyrians being predictable, then maybe there was a way to use that against them. Maybe being outnumbered and outgunned didn't have to mean losing. For the first time since the alarms had started, Maya allowed herself to hope that there might be another way to end this fight, a way that nobody else had thought of yet. Maya Rodriguez pushed her worn backpack under the desk and slipped into her usual seat in the far corner of the classroom. The Advanced Military Strategy course at the Terran Defense Academy was already buzzing with conversation, but nobody turned to look at her. They never did. She pulled out her notebook, the same one she had been using for 3 years. The cover was faded, and the corners were bent from being stuffed into lockers and dropped on floors. Maya opened it to a fresh page and wrote the date at the top in her neat handwriting. At the front of the room, Jake Morrison was holding court as usual. He stood with one foot propped on a chair, gesturing wildly as he explained his latest theory about space combat to anyone who would listen. His uniform was crisp and perfect, not a single wrinkle anywhere. The other students hung on his every word. "You see, the key to winning any battle is superior firepower," Jake said, his voice carrying easily across the room. "Get the biggest guns, the strongest shields, and you win. Simple as that." Tyler Brooks nodded eagerly from his seat in the front row. "Exactly. That's why Earth needs to build more dreadnoughts. We can't compete with alien technology using small ships." Maya looked down at her notebook and wrote a single word, "wrong." She had read every battle report from the outer colonies, studied every engagement between human and alien forces. Firepower alone never decided anything, but she kept her thoughts to herself. Captain Lisa Kane walked into the classroom, her boots clicking sharply on the metal floor. The students quickly found their seats and fell silent. Captain Kane was a veteran of the Centauri campaigns, and her left arm was cybernetic from an encounter with Rigelian pirates. She commanded respect without having to ask for it. "Good morning, cadets," Captain Kane said as she activated the holographic display at the front of the room. "Today we're going to discuss our newest problem." A star map appeared in the air above their heads. Red markers showed the positions of hostile fleets, while blue ones marked human territories. Maya noticed immediately that there were far more red markers than blue ones. "The Zephyrian Empire," Captain Kane continued. "They showed up in our sector 18 months ago and have been expanding ever since. 6 star systems have fallen to their fleets. 3 more are under siege." Jake raised his hand. "Captain, what kind of ships are they using?" "Massive ones," Captain Kane replied grimly. "Their smallest destroyers are larger than our heavy cruisers. Their dreadnoughts are the size of space stations, and their technology is at least 200 years ahead of ours." A murmur of concern rippled through the classroom. Maya made another note in her book. Size doesn't equal effectiveness. She had learned that lesson working in the Academy's maintenance bay, where the smallest tools often did the most important jobs. Captain Kane touched a control and the display zoomed in on the most recent battle site. The colony at New Perth lasted exactly 4 hours against a Zephyrian advance fleet. Our defenders never even managed to damage a single enemy ship. "How is that possible?" Tyler asked, his voice shaking slightly. "Their shields are incredibly strong, and their weapons have much longer range than ours," Captain Kane explained. "But more than that, they fight with perfect coordination. Every ship moves like part of a single organism. Their tactical formations are flawless." Maya wrote another note. "Too perfect." In her experience, things that seemed perfect usually had hidden weaknesses. "Are they coming here?" asked Jenny Walsh from the middle of the room. Captain Kane nodded, slowly. "Intelligence suggests they're planning to move on the Sol system within the next few months. Earth Command is preparing our defenses, but—" She paused and looked around the room. "I won't lie to you. Our chances don't look good." The classroom fell silent. Maya could hear the hum of the air recycling system and the distant sound of ships taking off from the Academy's landing pad. Through the window, she could see other students walking across the courtyard, unaware that their world might end soon. Jake broke the silence. "What about our newest battleships? The Montana-class ships have the most advanced weapons we've ever built." "The Zephyrians destroyed 2 Montana-class ships at New Perth without taking any damage in return," Captain Kane said quietly. Maya thought about the maintenance shifts she worked every night to pay for her education. She had crawled through the guts of Montana-class ships, seen their weapon systems up close. They were impressive, but they were also predictable. Every system followed standard design patterns. Every weapon placement matched regulation specifications. "Captain," Jake said, "maybe we should consider negotiating with them, if they're that much stronger than us. Negotiation requires that both sides want something the other can provide." Captain Kane replied. "The Zephyrians don't seem interested in anything except conquest. Every species they've encountered has either surrendered or been destroyed." Maya made one more note. Every species. That suggested the Zephyrians had developed their tactics by fighting many different enemies. But if all those enemies had been defeated the same way, maybe the Zephyrians had never learned to adapt to truly different approaches. Captain Kane activated a simulation program. "Let's run through a tactical exercise. I want you to work in teams of 4 and develop a strategy for defending a space station against a Zephyrian attack force." The students quickly formed groups. Jake naturally became the leader of the most popular team, while Tyler gathered his own followers. Maya waited to see which group might have room for her, but as usual, she was forgotten. She watched as the last group formed without her and realized she would be working alone. "Rodriguez," Captain Kane called out. "You can observe and take notes on the different approaches. Maya nodded and opened her notebook to a fresh page. She watched as the teams gathered around their tactical displays, arguing about weapon placements and shield configurations. Jake's team immediately began positioning heavy guns in traditional defensive patterns, while Tyler's group focused on building stronger barriers. The simulation began. On the main display, a small human space station faced off against a formation of Zephyrian ships. The alien vessels moved in perfect formation, their attacks coordinated with mathematical precision. Jake's defensive strategy lasted 12 minutes before the station was destroyed. Tyler's team managed 14 minutes. Each group tried their approach, and each one failed. The Zephyrian ships were simply too powerful and too well coordinated for conventional human tactics to work. Maya watched every simulation carefully, taking notes on how the alien ships moved and attacked. She began to see patterns in their behavior, small repetitions that suggested they were following some kind of program rather than making creative decisions. When the class ended, the students filed out looking worried and defeated. Captain Kane gathered her materials slowly, her expression grim. Maya stayed in her seat, staring at the notes she had taken. Something was bothering her about the Zephyrian tactics, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. That evening she made her way to the maintenance bay for her night shift. As she cleaned the floors and emptied the trash bins, she thought about perfect formations and predictable patterns. By the time her shift ended at midnight, an idea was beginning to form in her mind. Maybe being too perfect wasn't a strength, after all. Maybe it was a weakness waiting to be exploited. Maya waited in the small office for what felt like hours. Through the window, she watched transport ships carry civilians away from Earth while military vessels moved into defensive positions. The red emergency lights continued flashing in the hallways, and the distant sound of orders being shouted echoed from the command center. Captain Kane finally returned, followed by a tall man Maya had never seen before. He wore the uniform of a fleet commander and looked tired, as if he had not slept in days. "Rodriguez, this is Commander Alex Price from Admiral Stone's Strategic Planning Division," Captain Kane said. "I showed him your notes about Zephyrian patterns." Commander Price sat down across from Maya and opened her notebook. He studied her pages of observations for several minutes without speaking. Maya watched his face, trying to guess what he was thinking. "These are very detailed," Commander Price said finally. "You've been tracking their tactical behavior for weeks." "Yes, sir," Maya replied. "Every simulation we ran in class showed them same patterns. They never changed their approach." Commander Price nodded slowly. "We've noticed the same thing in actual combat reports from other systems. The Zephyrians use identical formations and identical attack sequences in every engagement, but we assumed it was because their methods were simply superior." "What if they're not superior?" Maya asked. "What if they're just the only methods the Zephyrians know how to use?" Commander Price leaned back in his chair. "Explain what you mean." Maya opened her notebook to a page covered with diagrams. Every species they've conquered probably tried to fight them using standard military tactics. Formation against formation. Firepower against firepower. The Zephyrians developed perfect responses to standard approaches. She pointed to one of her drawings. "But humans don't always use standard approaches. We break rules. We try things that don't make sense. What if that's what we need to do now?" Commander Price studied her diagrams. "You're suggesting that unconventional tactics might confuse them?" "More than confuse them," Maya said. "I think it might break their entire system. If they've never faced truly random behavior, their computers might not know how to respond." "Captain," Kane leaned forward. "Rodriguez, that's a very big assumption. You're betting that advanced alien technology can't adapt to new situations." Maya shook her head. "I'm not betting that they can't adapt, I'm betting that they've never had to. When you always win using the same methods, why would you develop new ones?" Commander Price was quiet for a long moment. Maya could hear voices from the command center getting louder and more urgent. "Rodriguez," Commander Price said, "Admiral Stone is meeting with fleet commanders in 1 hour to finalize our defensive strategy. Would you be willing to present your analysis to them?" Maya felt her heart start beating faster. "Sir, I'm just a third-year cadet. They won't listen to me." They'll listen if your ideas have merit, Commander Price replied. And right now, we need every idea we can get. Our current plans give us less than a 5% chance of victory. Captain Kane stood up. Rodriguez, this could be important. Are you willing to try? Maya thought about Jake Morrison and the other students who had received combat assignments. They were preparing to fight a battle using strategies that had failed every other species the Zephyrians had encountered. Yes, ma'am, Maya said. I'll try. Commander Price led Maya and Captain Kane through corridors she had never seen before. They passed through several security checkpoints before reaching the main strategy room. Maya had only heard about this place in stories from older students. The room was enormous, with holographic displays covering every wall. The central table showed a three-dimensional map of the solar system, with red markers representing the approaching Zephyrian fleet and blue markers showing Earth's defenses. Admiral Stone stood at the head of the table, surrounded by fleet commanders and senior officers. Maya recognized some of them from academy ceremonies, but she had never been this close to such high-ranking military leaders. Admiral, Commander Price said, this is Cadet Rodriguez. She has some observations about enemy, tactical patterns that might be relevant to our planning. Admiral Stone looked at Maya with tired eyes. Cadet, we have less than 48 hours before the enemy arrives. What do you have for us? Maya's mouth felt dry, but she opened her notebook and moved to stand beside the holographic display. Sir, the Zephyrian fleet uses predictable formations. They've used the same patterns in every engagement for the past 18 months. She pointed to the red markers on the display. This is Formation Delta 7 from our training simulations. If they maintain this pattern, their dreadnoughts will take positions here, here, and here when they engage our forces. One of the fleet commanders, a woman with gray hair and scarred hands, looked skeptical. Cadet, predictability doesn't help us if their firepower still outclasses ours. Ma'am, that's true if we fight them using conventional tactics, Maya replied. But what if we don't use conventional tactics? Admiral Stone gestured for her to continue. What are you proposing? Maya took a deep breath. Every species they've conquered tried to match their formations and their firepower, but humans have something the Zephyrians have never encountered: chaos. She moved to the control panel and began adjusting the display. Instead of trying to fight their formations with our formations, what if we attacked with no formation at all? What if every ship acted independently, using completely random tactics? The holographic display showed human ships scattered across space in seemingly random positions. Maya continued her explanation. Their computers are programmed to respond to logical military behavior. But if our ships attack from impossible angles, retreat when they should advance, and group together in ways that make no tactical sense, their response algorithms might not know what to do. The gray-haired commander shook her head. Cadet, that's not strategy. That's just chaos. Yes, ma'am, Maya said. That's exactly what it is. And chaos might be the one thing they can't plan for. Admiral Stone studied the display for a long time. The room was completely silent, except for the hum of the computers and the distant sound of ships launching from the orbital platforms. Rodriguez, Admiral Stone said finally, you're asking me to throw out centuries of military doctrine and bet everything on controlled chaos. Sir, our current doctrine gives us a 5% chance of survival, Maya replied. Maybe chaos gives us better odds. Another commander, a younger man with pilot's wings on his uniform, leaned forward. Admiral, it could work. I've seen what happens when pirates use random attack patterns. It's hard to defend against something that doesn't follow any rules. Pirates usually lose, the gray-haired commander pointed out. Pirates usually fight against superior numbers and firepower, the pilot replied. Just like us, Admiral Stone looked around the table at his commanders. Maya could see them thinking, weighing the impossible choice between certain defeat using proven methods and possible victory using untested ideas. Rodriguez, Admiral Stone said, if we try your approach, how would we coordinate our forces? How do we maintain communication and command structure in the middle of chaos? Maya had been thinking about this question since her conversation with Captain Kane. Sir, we don't. Every ship gets basic objectives, but complete freedom in how to achieve them. No formations, no coordinated attacks, just individual ships doing whatever seems most effective in the moment. That's insane, the gray-haired commander said. Ma'am, Maya replied quietly. Maybe insane is what we need. Admiral Stone was quiet for another long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Commander Price, I want you to work with Cadet Rodriguez to develop a complete tactical framework based on her chaos theory. We have 36 hours to prepare our forces for the most unconventional battle in human history. Maya spent the next 24 hours in the strategy room, working with Commander Price and a team of tactical officers to turn her chaos theory into actual battle plans. They divided the human fleet into small groups of 2 or 3 ships each, giving every group a different objective but no specific instructions on how to achieve it. The hardest part was convincing the ship captains. Maya listened to video calls with fleet commanders who had spent decades learning proper military formations. Many of them thought the new strategy was completely insane. Captain Ryan Cooper of the destroyer Defiant was one of the most vocal opponents. Admiral, you're asking me to ignore everything I learned in 20 years of service. How can I lead my crew into battle without a proper plan? Captain Cooper, Admiral Stone replied from the main screen. Your proper plans have a 5% chance of success. Cadet Rodriguez's approach might give us better odds. Maya watched Captain Cooper's face on the screen. She could see his frustration and confusion. Behind him, she noticed Jake Morrison standing at a control station, looking equally bewildered. Sir, Captain Cooper said, what if the chaos strategy doesn't work? What if we just end up getting ourselves killed faster? Then we die fighting instead of surrendering, Admiral Stone replied grimly. Captain, you have your orders. Prepare your crew for unconventional warfare. The call ended, and Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. She was asking people to risk their lives based on her untested theory. If she was wrong, thousands of human beings would die because they followed her advice. Commander Price noticed her expression. Rodriguez, having second thoughts? Sir, what if I'm wrong? Maya asked quietly. What if chaos just makes it easier for them to destroy us? Commander Price looked at the tactical displays surrounding them. Rodriguez, our conventional strategies failed at every other colony. The Zephyrians destroyed entire fleets without taking significant damage. At least your approach gives us something they haven't seen before. Maya nodded but still felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. She returned to her work, creating detailed briefing materials for each ship group. Every captain would receive different objectives and different suggested tactics, ensuring that no 2 groups would behave the same way. 6 hours before the enemy was scheduled to arrive, Maya received an unexpected visitor. Jake Morrison knocked on the strategy room door, still wearing his new lieutenant's uniform. Maya, Jake said, can I talk to you for a minute? Maya looked up from her work. Jake had never used her first name before. Usually he called her Rodriguez, or nothing at all. What is it, Jake? Jake sat down across from her, looking uncomfortable. I heard that you're the one who came up with our new battle strategy. I made some suggestions, Maya replied carefully. Suggestions that Admiral Stone is betting the entire fleet on, Jake said. Maya, do you understand what you've done? You've convinced them to throw out the book and try something completely crazy. Maya closed her notebook and looked at Jake directly. Jake, the book doesn't work against the Zephyrians. Every species that tried conventional tactics lost. But at least they lost fighting properly, Jake said. At least they maintained discipline and honor. What you're proposing isn't warfare, it's chaos. Maybe chaos is what we need, Maya replied. The same words she had used with Admiral Stone. Jake shook his head. I've been assigned to the Defiant. Captain Cooper is a good officer, but even he doesn't understand how to follow your strategy. How are we supposed to fight without formations or coordinated attacks? Maya thought about how to explain something. That was more instinct than science. Jake, remember when we were kids and played war games in the schoolyard? Remember how the games were most fun when nobody followed the rules? This isn't a game, Maya. This is real warfare against an enemy that has never lost. Exactly, Maya said. They've never lost because every enemy they faced played by the same rules. But humans are good at breaking rules. We're creative and unpredictable in ways that computers can't calculate. Jake was quiet for a moment. What if you're wrong? What if breaking the rules just gets us all killed? Maya had been asking herself the same question for hours. Then at least we'll have tried something different. At least we won't die doing exactly what every other species did. Jake stood up to leave, then turned back. Maya, I owe you an apology. I never took you seriously in class. I thought you were just quiet because you didn't have anything important to say. Maybe I didn't, Maya replied. Maybe I just finally found something worth talking about. After Jake left, Maya returned to her preparations. She worked through the night, fine-tuning the chaos protocols and answering questions from ship captains across the fleet. By dawn, every human vessel had received their unconventional orders. Admiral Stone called a final meeting 2 hours before. The Zephyrian fleet was scheduled to arrive. The strategy room filled with senior officers, both in person and through video links from their ships. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Stone began, in 90 minutes, we will face the most powerful enemy humanity has ever encountered. Our strategy today is unlike anything in military history. We're going to fight chaos against order, creativity against programming, human instinct against alien logic. Maya watched the faces of the officers around the table. Some looked determined. Others looked terrified, and a few looked angry. All of them looked like people who were about to try something they had never imagined doing. Each ship group has independent objectives, Admiral Stone continued. You are free to pursue those objectives using any methods you choose. Attack from impossible angles. Retreat when advancing would make more sense. Group together in ways that serve no tactical purpose. Make decisions that confuse even yourselves. Captain Jennifer Walsh, commanding the heavy cruiser Valiant, spoke up. Admiral, how do we coordinate if every ship is acting independently? You don't coordinate, Admiral Stone replied. That's the point. The Zephyrians expect coordination. They've programmed responses for every possible formation and attack pattern humans have ever used, but they haven't programmed responses for pure chaos. Maya felt her heart racing as the final countdown began. Through the room's windows, she could see the human fleet spreading out across space in seemingly random positions. No formations, no organized lines of battle, just individual ships waiting for the enemy to arrive. Zephyrian fleet detected on long-range sensors, announced a technician. Time to engagement, 47 minutes. Admiral Stone looked around, the room one last time. Today we find out if humanity's greatest strength is our ability to think differently. Today we discover whether chaos can defeat perfection. Maya opened her notebook and wrote a single word. Hope. For the first time since the emergency alarms had started 3 days ago, she felt like they might actually have a chance. The waiting was almost over. Soon they would know if her theory could save the human race or if she had just convinced everyone to die in a more creative way. The Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly where Maya's calculations predicted they would. 47 ships appeared in perfect formation, their massive hulls gleaming under the distant light of Earth's sun. The smallest destroyer was twice the size of humanity's largest battleship. Maya watched from the strategy room as sensors tracked the enemy approach. The alien ships moved with mechanical precision, maintaining exact distances and perfect alignment. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Enemy fleet has assumed attack formation Delta 7, reported the sensor operator. They're moving toward Earth at steady acceleration. Admiral Stone activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Stone. The enemy has arrived exactly as predicted. Execute chaos protocol immediately. Good luck to all of you. Maya held her breath as she watched the tactical display. The human ships began moving in ways that made no sense according to any military manual she had ever read. Some vessels accelerated toward the enemy at maximum speed while others drifted sideways as if their engines had failed. 3 destroyers started spinning in slow circles for no apparent reason. On board the Defiant, Jake Morrison stared at his tactical screen in confusion. Captain Cooper had ordered the ship to approach the enemy fleet backwards while firing randomly at empty space. Jake's training told him this was suicide. but his orders were to follow the chaos protocol no matter how crazy it seemed. "Captain," Jake said, "the Zephyrian formation is responding to our approach. They're moving to intercept us." "Good," Captain Cooper replied, though he sounded uncertain. "Helm, start evasive maneuvers. Make sure they're completely random. Don't follow any pattern at all." Back in the strategy room, Maya watched the enemy formation begin to shift. The Zephyrian ships were trying to adjust their positions to counter what they thought was a human attack formation. But the human ships weren't in any formation at all. "Enemy fleet is showing signs of confusion," reported Commander Price. Their response algorithms seemed to be cycling through different tactical subroutines. Maya felt a spark of hope. "They're trying to identify our strategy so they can counter it. But there is no strategy to identify." The first shots of the battle came from a human frigate that opened fire on a Zephyrian scout ship from point-blank range. The alien vessel's shields absorbed the damage easily, but the attack came from an angle that should have been impossible. The Zephyrian ship's automatic defense systems targeted empty space where a normal attacker should have been. Within minutes, chaos erupted across the entire battlefield. Human ships attacked from every direction using tactics that violated basic physics and common sense. Some vessels charged directly at enemy dreadnoughts while others fled toward the outer planets. A group of destroyers began playing what looked like a game of tag with Zephyrian escorts. The alien fleet's perfect coordination started to break down. Their formation algorithms were designed to respond to logical threats, but human behavior was completely illogical. Zephyrian ships found themselves firing at positions where enemy vessels should have been, instead of where they actually were. "Direct hit on enemy cruiser," announced the sensor operator. The Valiant caught them completely off guard. Maya watched as Captain Walsh's heavy cruiser appeared from behind an asteroid, fired a full salvo into the side of a Zephyrian ship, then immediately accelerated away in the opposite direction. The alien vessel's return fire missed by several kilometers. Jake Morrison was beginning to understand the genius of Maya's strategy. On his screen, he could see Zephyrian ships hesitating before each movement, their computers trying to process human actions that made no tactical sense. The aliens' superior technology was useless if they couldn't predict where to aim it. "Captain," Jake called out, "I have an idea. What if we pretend to retreat toward that enemy dreadnought instead of away from it?" Captain Cooper grinned. "Morrison, that's exactly the kind of thinking we need. Do it." The Defiant turned and accelerated directly toward the largest Zephyrian ship in the area. The alien dreadnought's defensive systems prepared to repel what looked like a suicide attack. But at the last second, the human destroyer veered sideways and unleashed every weapon it had into the dreadnought's unprotected flank. Maya's heart raced as she watched the battle unfold. Human ships were taking damage, but they were also dealing damage in return. More importantly, the Zephyrian fleet was making mistakes. Their perfect formations were falling apart as they tried to respond to attacks that followed no pattern. "Enemy command ship is moving toward the center of our formation," reported Commander Price. Maya looked at the display and saw the massive Zephyrian flagship approaching what the aliens thought was the core of the human fleet. But there was no core. The human ships that happened to be in that area were there by accident, not design. "That's our chance," Maya said suddenly. "Admiral, can you contact every ship in that sector?" Admiral Stone nodded and opened a communication channel. Maya took the microphone with shaking hands. "All ships near the enemy flagship," Maya said. "This is Cadet Rodriguez. I need you to do something that will sound completely insane." "Jake," Morrison heard Maya's voice through the communication system and felt a chill run down his spine. The quiet girl from the back of the classroom was about to ask him to do something impossible. "I need every ship to converge on the enemy flagship." At the same time, Maya continued, "Not in formation, not with coordination, just everyone attack at once from whatever direction you're facing. Make it look like the most chaotic thing you can imagine." Captain Cooper looked at Jake with raised eyebrows. "Morrison, does that sound insane to you?" "Yes, sir," Jake replied. "Completely insane." "Good," Captain Cooper said. "Let's do it." 17 human ships suddenly changed course and accelerated toward the Zephyrian flagship from 17 different directions. Some approached from above, others from below, and several came at the massive vessel sideways. The alien ship's defensive systems tried to target all the incoming threats, but couldn't establish firing solutions for attacks coming from so many impossible angles. The coordinated chaos worked perfectly. The Zephyrian flagship, designed to withstand organized fleet attacks, couldn't cope with what amounted to a cosmic riot. Human ships swarmed over it like angry insects, firing weapons and launching missiles from every conceivable position. Maya watched in amazement as the alien flagship's shields failed under the sustained barrage. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull as human weapons found weak points that should have been protected by overlapping defensive fields. "Enemy flagship is breaking apart," announced the sensor operator, his voice filled with disbelief. Destruction of their command ship sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian fleet. Without central coordination, the remaining alien vessels fell back on basic survival algorithms. They began retreating in the same perfect formation they had used to arrive, but now it worked against them. Human ships harassed them all the way to the edge of the solar system, attacking from random directions and making it impossible for the aliens to mount an organized defense. Within 6 hours, the surviving Zephyrian ships had fled back into hyperspace, broadcasting warnings about the unpredictable warriors of Earth. The battle that was supposed to end with humanity's destruction had instead ended with the first major defeat of the Zephyrian Empire. Maya sat in the strategy room, staring at the tactical display that now showed only blue markers scattered across space. She had done it. Her crazy theory about chaos defeating order had actually worked. Admiral Stone approached her with a smile on his weathered face. "Congratulations, Admiral Rodriguez." Maya looked up in confusion. "Sir?" "The Senate just approved your emergency promotion," Admiral Stone explained. "You're now the youngest admiral in human history. Your chaos protocols are being implemented across the entire fleet." Jake Morrison's voice came through the communication system. "Maya, this is Jake on the Defiant. I owe you an apology, and probably my life." Maya picked up the microphone with trembling hands. "Jake, you don't owe me anything. You were brave enough to try something that sounded impossible." "No," Jake replied. "You were smart enough to see what the rest of us missed. You saved us all." Maya looked around the strategy room at the officers and technicians who were celebrating their impossible victory. For the first time in her life, people were paying attention to her. But more importantly, they were alive to pay attention because she had finally found the courage to speak up when it mattered most. The quiet girl from the back corner of the classroom had changed the course of human history by proving that sometimes the best strategy is having no strategy at all.